right, welcome everybody. It is Wednesday Night Live. Let's get this show started. Glad to see everybody here tonight and everybody watching online on Facebook and on Rumble. YouTube, are we on YouTube? Okay, good. Who cares? Wherever you're watching from, we're glad you're here with us tonight. And before we go too much further, would you join me as we pray for tonight's program? Heavenly Father, we're so grateful to be here tonight, assembled together with like-minded people, and we're going to be hearing a conversation that is really important, talking about our borders here in America. And so we just ask that you would bless the conversation between Pastor Tim and Chris, that it would bring glory to you, and that it would really educate and equip people, and people would be watching far and wide, that this message would be that helpful. And we ask it all in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, so for those of you that are here in the house tonight, we are taking an offering for those willing and able. If you're able to help support our watch, we really appreciate that. You know, we bring content like this every Wednesday, and as well as a radio program that is happening now on AM 590 locally here in Southern California. And so we really appreciate your support because it allows us to do what we're able to do, which is really making a big difference. You can give online if you'd like to at ourwatchnow.com/donate. And also, for those of you that are here tonight, we are continuing to sell some of the few hoodies that we have left, the Our Watch hoodies that are going to be out in the fellowship area. So pick up one of those while they're still available. Also, Pastor Tim's book is here, and we're selling those tonight as well. He wrote a book last year called Awake, America's Final Great Awakening. So if you haven't already got a copy, feel free to pick one up tonight. Also, if you're watching online, you can purchase one also at the ourwatchnow.com website. Next Wednesday, we're having back a guest that we had several months ago that we're really excited about, and that is Anthony Trimino, candidate for California governor. So next Wednesday, 7 o'clock here at Our Watch and on online on all the places where our videos are streaming. So check that out. If you haven't done so already, make sure you go to the Our Watch website, join the email list so that you keep up to date with everything that is coming up. And make sure that you like and subscribe on the social media sites and the video sites, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Rumble, all that good stuff. So we're glad that you guys are here. We're going to be getting started in just a moment. So sit back, relax, and enjoy Wednesday Night Live.
He's heard it all before. You're a pastor. You're not supposed to get political. You shouldn't be talking about these issues, so just stay out of politics and stick to preaching the gospel. Life, marriage, sexuality, borders, ethnicity. These things aren't political. They're biblical. God's word has much to say about the culture we're living in. This is Our Watch with Tim Thompson.
Well, good evening, everybody. Good to see you guys here tonight. So happy to be with you. Just a whole bunch going on in the world. I just want to remind you, we gather together on Wednesday nights to find out what's going on in the world so we can be the public square. The church can actually be the public square again like it used to be in this great country of ours. We come together to find out what's going on in the world, and then also just from a biblical perspective, what does God's word say about it? And we have a lot of work ahead of us. We have an election year that we're in now. These elections are going to be massive and have big implications as to how this country is going to move forward. And we're excited that we get to be a part of it. we've got a lot of things going on that would tell us why these things are so important. And I just want to show you a quick video before we get started. This is the new Virginia governor, Glenn Youngkin, and he gave a speech. And I want you guys to notice when you watch this video, watch the different groups. There's one group that responds one way, another group that responds another way. Take a look.
My message to parents is this. You have a fundamental right enshrined in law by this General Assembly to make decisions with regard to your child's upbringing, education, and care. And we will protect and reassert that right.
So you can see there's a group of people who didn't stand or cheer or get excited about that at all. I would let you know that is the Democrat Party, just so you know. This is what we're up against. And we've been talking about this long before COVID. We've been talking about what's going on in our culture, especially when it comes to what's happening in the government-ran schools. And that is a takeover of our youth. It is an indoctrination into leftism, Marxism. It's an indoctrination into sexual immorality, and it's been happening right in front of us. And they're taking parents' rights away. And when you look at how we're going to be voting come election time, we have to keep these things in mind. And we have to reach out to friends, family members, neighbors that may have voted Democrat their whole life. They need to start waking up. Those people who are parents and grandparents, they need to understand that party that they've been voting for does not care about their rights. They don't think they even have rights. They want to take away the relationship between parent and child and replace the parent with the government-ran schools. So we have our work cut out for us. I think we're going to see a massive red wave come November, and I think it's going to be to the likes which we haven't seen before, but we'll see what ends up happening. But we're in a time right now where we really have to be paying attention. In a little bit over a month, we're going to have a special Wednesday night live where we bring in what we call the Inland Empire Family PAC. This is a political action committee that was formed by people here at our watch, and now it's a separate organization, but we're doing campaign funding now, and what we're doing is taking a look at the 4 school districts that surround our area right here. There are 11 seats up for election, and we're going to try to do everything we can to take all 11 seats. So we've got, yeah, it's awesome. We're still in the process of doing interviews. If you or somebody you know wants to run for school board, we are going through that process of interviewing. And I'll tell you, once we get behind you, it will be a force to be reckoned with. There's a lot of momentum with this PAC, and there's nobody in Riverside County doing anything like this. So this is something new. And I'll tell you what, we can't keep doing the same thing we've been doing because we're losing. So it's time that we start changing it up. We start being real shrewd the way God has called us to be. All right, let's go ahead and invite up our guests because we have a whole lot to talk about tonight. Our guest this evening was a union leader representing over 2,000 Border Patrol agents at the San Diego sector who work in either Orange, Riverside, San Bernardino, and San Diego counties. He retired from the Border Patrol after years of service and now spends time speaking about our Border Patrol security issues with leaders all over the country. Please welcome our friend here at Our Watch, Christopher Harris. Christopher, always a pleasure to have you here.
It is always a pleasure to be here.
We were talking today before the program. This is his 3rd time here on Our Watch, and you're always a wealth of information, and you have a real heart for what's happening right now. And And I want to be, I've got several videos. I just want to play some clips and get your take because, well, before we get into it, why don't you just share a little bit about your background for people who this is their first time seeing you. You've got a lot of years, a lot of experience. You've been on a lot of news networks talking about these things. Share a little bit about your background, if you would.
I'm incredibly great. There you go. I started back in '82 at the ripe old age of 18 as a New York State correction officer. They sent me to a fun little place called Sing Sing. That was unpleasant. I realized how much being a correctional officer in New York State and max prisons actually sucked. Excuse my language. I was a cop. I'm from New York. I'm Irish. I will do my best not to yeah, I really don't give a crap. So I got into cops, became a police officer after a few years, made detective, went to the Treasury Department to be a federal officer. Got tired of the winters in New York, quite frankly. They suck. You just saw they got hit by a blizzard, and the one nice thing about California is it still does not snow where I live. Took a job with the United States Border Patrol in '96, '97, big hiring, and that was actually under Bill Clinton. Was assigned, luckily enough, to San Diego, where I reside. And I spent 21 years on the southwest border, mostly in San Diego, but also in, I spent time in Ajo, Arizona, Douglas, Arizona, El Centro, Campo. So a total of 36 years law enforcement. I got very involved in our union, National Border Patrol Council, out here in San Diego. I ended up being secretary on the executive board out here and director of legislative and political affairs. That allowed me to speak out. Otherwise, as a border patrol agent, or as a police officer, you can't speak out, but as a union official, I could speak out. I got very involved with that, meeting various senators, congressmen, the chief of staff to the president. Got very involved with what was going on the border. And then I got to see under 5 administrations what worked and what didn't work. And I'm sure we're going to talk about what's certainly not working now. The one thing I try to say is it's not a bipartisan issue. It should be a nonpartisan issue. Securing these borders and protecting our country and the people therein should be a nonpartisan issue. And unfortunately, I've seen it change to a bipartisan, very partisan issue. And I'm sure we're going to discuss that. Yeah. And what wrong? It was really working. And I want to just preface this. I tell people, I don't like Donald Trump. I voted for him. I wouldn't want my daughter dating him. But what he did on the border was phenomenal. It worked. It truly worked. We saw it working. And then a matter of days was undone by this administration. And we're going to discuss that. But that's my background, so thank you for listening to me.
All right. We've got a lot of statistics we're going to go over, but the first thing I want to address is the wall. I mean, we know that that the wall didn't get finished. We know massive portions of it did, but right now we're seeing a lot of hypocrisy within the current administration. Marsha Blackburn actually called this out. She was calling out Mayorkas.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. Well, listen, I want them to see it. Take a look at this. This is Marsha Blackburn calling him out.
Let me ask you this, yes or no, have you ever visited the White House?
Have I visited the White House?
Yes, have you ever visited the White House?
He seems stunned
Yes.
by that question.
So you're aware there is a fence around the entire perimeter of the White House to prevent unauthorized individuals from entering the White House, correct?
Yes.
And U.S. taxpayers are also funding a $500,000 fence around President Biden's Rehoboth Beach house, correct?
I'm not aware.
And your department is overseeing this construction. You should be aware of that. President Biden obviously likes walls when they protect him. So can you explain to me why a wall is effective and necessary at the White House and the Biden Beach House, but is not necessary at the southern border?
That's a good question, isn't it? That's a really good question. And I think it's funny. I mean, the Bible says that a fool will be known by their many words. And if he would have just sat there and been quiet, he would have not looked as much of a fool. But for him to say, oh, I'm not aware of that, and then she goes, it's being done by your department. You should know what's happening. You guys are overseeing it. This is an issue of hypocrisy, which
staggeringly
doesn't seem to be a problem for Biden. He doesn't really seem to care that people see the hypocrisy.
So a couple things about Mayorkas. I've met him when he was head of CIS, which is a component of DHS. He was dirty. He was corrupt. He got involved with stuff. There were some press things, but they kept it somewhat quiet. And he's an idiot. He's not a smart guy. And this is the guy that's in charge of the Department of Homeland Security, which was created, and I was there in D.C. when we created DHS in 2002 after 9/11, and it was supposed to be helpful, and it really isn't anymore. It's not all that effective. But this guy's in charge of keeping you and your kids safe in this country, and it's, like you said, he should have kept his mouth shut. About the fence, the walls, we actually use the term fence more in Border Patrol because that's what it is. The president said he would give us a wall, and we told him we really wanted a fence. We need to be able to see through it to see our adversaries. The bad guys will stage on the other side with Molotov cocktails and guns and so on and so forth. But fences work. They're not 100%, but we put them around prisons for a reason. We have them around the White House for a reason. We have them around Fort Knox for a reason. And I tend to do this at speaking engagements. You need armed people on the border or around the White House. That's a Secret Service and whatnot. You need security, technology, sensors and cameras and things like that. But put them all together, and you have a really good package that works. And you saw after the big insurrection, January 6th, what's the first thing Nancy Pelosi and they did? They threw up fences everywhere because they work. They slow people down. They give us time to respond. People can't just run through. We used to call them bonsais when they would run through in the hundreds. So fences or walls work. And for them to say it doesn't on the border is disingenuous. And that's saying it kindly, or you could go and say it's lying. But the hypocrisy is staggering.
Right.
And it's bothersome to us.
Yeah. Right now, so over the last year, the last calendar year, let me make sure I'm very clear. The last calendar year, we've seen, President Biden's been president for a year. And during that calendar year, we've seen numbers that are numbers we've never seen ever in our nation. Over 2 million illegal crossings last year. Yeah, and then not just that, but then also up to 600,000.
So we have our own metrics to figure out what we call gotaways. And one of that is we actually see footprints, and they lead to a road from the fence, and then they're gone, meaning somebody picked them up, a loaded vehicle picked them up. So we don't just guess. We have metrics to figure out how many get away. But it's safe to say between 25% and 30% of what we apprehend, 25% to 30% will be getaways. And you have to understand, these are people that really don't want to be caught. They're the scary ones, because most people now are coming across the border and going, I want asylum. They're lying. They're gaming the system, but they're going to claim asylum. But the ones that are afraid to get caught and go through the biometric procedures, those are the ones that should scare you. They're the ones that are getting away. They're dressed in camouflage clothes. So probably last year, about 600,000 people got away through the border that we didn't apprehend. We don't know where they went. We don't know who they are, what their background is, what they're here for. And of the 2 million we caught, we're releasing the majority of them into the United States to disappear again into the United States, to be flown here or there, never to be seen again. They don't show up for court. So a tremendous amount of people are coming into this country. And again, the ones we catch, we do fingerprint them, but if we don't have a connectivity to their country's databases, and we don't with most of them, just because we ran them here it just tells us that here they weren't arrested. It doesn't tell us that in Mali they were arrested. And so we really don't know who's coming to this country. And I've never seen under 5 administrations it this bad on the border. It is out of control. Nobody seems to care, or it's done deliberately, but it is the worst I've ever seen. And 2 million apprehensions in 1 year, the worst. They try to say we wouldn't make, the media said last spring when we were starting to call alarm on this, they said, well, we said there's going to be 1 million apprehensions. They said, that's never going to happen. Well, they were right. We had 2 million.
Yeah, they were right.
It's insane.
Yeah. So we had you on. In fact, I looked it up. The last time we had you on was in that time. And it was like all of a sudden it was this massive thing. Right after Biden got in, he undid everything that Donald Trump did. Immediately we started having a crisis at the border. Jen Psaki didn't want to call it a crisis. No, Mayorkas didn't want to call it a crisis. Biden didn't want to call it a crisis. Kamala Harris didn't want to show up to anything. And now here we are nearly a year later from when we had you on the show last. And last time they were saying, well, we won't get anywhere near 1 million, and what we're seeing is cyclical.
Right.
Now, explain that, because there are
cycles that we go through, and it tends to in the summer go down because it's real hot in the deserts on the southwest border. But we didn't see any really reduction in people crossing. It just keeps going up. When we're looking at people we call ODMs, other than Mexicans, it's up something like 1,700%. I just got the numbers today from where I get my numbers. Up 1,700%. And we're catching people from 160 countries around the world. And the left will tell you, and I differentiate between the left and liberals. Some liberals are just naive and they're decent people, but the left has its own agenda. The left will tell you, the media will tell you, that these all, oh my God, horrible. You can't convince me that all 160 countries, super bad things are happening where they need asylum. What they're doing is abusing the asylum system. The cartels and the smuggling organizations figured out what to say. So depending where you come from around the country, they give them basically a script to say. So if you come from China, and I've interviewed people from China, they're going to claim asylum and say that they're Christians and being persecuted. But when you ask them, like, okay, well, tell me about Jesus Christ. This is actual stuff that I've done. And they look at you and go, who? I'm not the best Christian. I work at it. But I do know the central tenet of my faith of who Jesus Christ is. So I suggest if you don't know who Jesus Christ is, you're not a Christian. So but they're on script. That's what they claim for asylum. If they're coming from Central American countries, they say gang violence. I was interviewing a guy from El Salvador, and he said they were after him, MS-13. I said, but you got to Mexico, you're safe, right? Why didn't you stay there? Oh, no, they tracked me down to Mexico. I said, where are you going? He goes, LA. I said, you do know that's where MS-13 started, right? That's like their headquarters, LA, that's where you're going? And I had another guy say asylum, gang violence. I said, where are you going? He said, Oakland. I said, I think people from Oakland are leaving Oakland to go to El Salvador to get away from the gangs. So they're scripted, they lie, and then they never show up for court. So 160 countries were catching people from around the world that are claiming asylum. It's a lie. Even President Biden knows it's a lie. At a press conference, he said, oh my God, they're leaving horrible environments where they can't get jobs and economic, and they're getting asylum. They should. That's not asylum. That's not under the asylum laws. They don't say anything about economics. That's the immigration system, but they don't want to use the immigration system. So they're using the asylum system, which is a wonderful system. We're Americans. We don't want to get rid of it. We are the last beacon of hope. God bless, we should be. But you don't get to come from a country and say to yourself, I want a better job, but I'm going to misuse the asylum system. And that's what's happening now. And under President Trump, and I just want to bring this up real quick, and I hate to talk slow, but I'm Irish and I don't shut up. We had what was called the MPP, the Migrant Protection Protocols, to remain in Mexico. And President Trump amazingly made a deal with the socialist president, President Obrador of Mexico, where we would send everybody back to them. Previously, they wouldn't take people if they weren't from Mexico. If they came from Kenya and claimed asylum, everybody went back to Mexico. And the theory was, and the way it worked was you waited in a line till it was your turn for asylum here. You said you're coming from Mali or Malawi or Senegal or Yemen, and you need to get here for asylum. Okay, well, you're in Mexico. You're safe now. You'll wait in line till it's your turn. And what happened miraculously, people didn't come. They didn't come anymore because it wasn't working for them. They weren't going to be able to disappear in the U.S. President Biden, his first day, undid that, the migrant protection protocols. The Supreme Court just ruled he has to bring it back. Well, I just found out today that we're only doing a few dozen a day. We were doing thousands a day under Trump. And now they have to be Spanish speakers. So all those people that are claiming asylum from like 149 or 130 other countries that don't speak Spanish, they get to stay in this country waiting for their asylum hearings, which they won't show up for. So even though the Supreme Court told this administration to bring back the migrant protection protocols, they're really not. They're not following the law. They just have an absolute abhorrence of following the law, what the Supreme Court has ruled to do. So they're going to tell you that the migrant protection protocols are back in place. They're not. They're not being used properly. And that was one of the biggest things Trump did, and the biggest thing that knocked the numbers down on the southwestern border.
Right. Right, and the cartels know it. They know they're making big money, upwards of $100 million per week. Per week, $100 million to traffic people into our nation. Take a look at this video, and I got some more stuff I want to ask you on this.
Good morning, Dagan, and great to be with you. So, of course, what we're seeing right now, the start of this year, 2022, we're seeing an uptick in human smuggling because, of course, the criminal organizations are exploiting the current border crisis. And because of that, they're recruiting drivers. We're seeing recruitment of drivers through social media platforms. And the video you're showing right now, that particular driver was from Houston, Texas, and he was recruited through a social media platform to become a driver to smuggle illegal immigrants, because it's very profitable, not only for the driver, but also for the criminal organizations, because there's very low risk, very low prosecution in terms of when these individuals are caught, especially when we talk about young adults and juveniles that are apprehended. But we're seeing an uptick, a rise in these human smuggling cases, and they're using various different methods to smuggle these illegal immigrants into the country. And that's a perfect example of what we're seeing in Laredo, Texas, and throughout the southern border.
Yeah, so very little apprehensions and very little
Prosecutions.
Prosecutions. So they're doing it and just getting away with it, is what he's saying. And are you hearing that is indeed what's going on?
So, I mean, the cartels are smart. I mean, they're horrible, sadistic, bad people. I mean, they're some of the worst criminals in the world. I mean, when I was a cop in New York, I always thought we'd see the low, like the Jamaicans. Oh my God, these gangs are the worst. Then the Colombians were the worst. I always think you can't get worse, but the cartels are some of the most vicious and violent and brutal there is. They're not stupid. So we saw they used to go to the casinos. I was working at Checkpoint out in Campo on I-8. They were going to the casinos, and they were watching for people losing money. And then they would approach them in the parking lot, $5,000 to put people in their vehicle, drive them across because nothing would happen to them. They were looking for older people, older white people who had RVs, and because nothing would happen to them. They were recruiting our kids down in Imperial Beach and San Ysidro areas of San Diego because they were never going to be prosecuted. So yeah, they know there's a very low prosecution rate for human smuggling, human trafficking. And they hire these people in the U.S. to do the driving. And then a lot of these guys get a little crazy, and you have wrong-way drivers and fatalities because of these cartels. They don't care. They have zero respect for human life. I mean, I've seen videos of them cutting people in half to send a message. And these are in our country now.
That actually just happened this week. They
all the time.
found another car with a person's head just in the middle. They just left it there as a message. And there's the head right on the car.
Well, there was one. My wife keeps track. She's from Mexico, but in front of the governor's office down in Guanajuato or whatever, 11 bodies, 11 heads, parked there just to send a message, broad daylight. They're brutal.
Yeah, and to think what happened. I mean, they're smuggling they're smuggling people by the thousands, yeah. And what some of the women and the young girls go through as they're on their way here. Horrific. Can you, I mean, just without being too graphic,
So we knew that in interviews
on?
that like 13-year-old girls were being provided with the morning after pill by their families down in Guatemala and El Salvador. I've seen pictures. I've seen it in my area of operations, what they call a rape tree. You'll see a bunch of braziers hung on it, and that's where the group will just take all the girls and women and rape them just because they can, and then throw all the braziers up there. And it's a statement. They're making a statement. Look what we did here. It's brutal stuff. I have some liberal friends who say, what we need to do is stop human trafficking. And I'm like, you don't get it. Anything comes across the southwest border that's illegal or illicit goes to the cartels, everything. If you don't go through them, you're going to die. That's money, that's weapons, that's people, that's drugs, that's all of that. And so everything that comes across the border, there's not some niche organization like, oh, well, we're a boutique organization. We only handle human trafficking, girls for sex crime. It's all through the cartel. So if you want to stop human trafficking of young girls and young women and things like that, you got to stop it all. There's no boutique little organization. That's what we do. The rest is just the regular plebeian smuggling of people. That's all of it. And so I don't get my liberal friends who will go like, well, we only want you to go after this. The only way to do that is to go after all of it. And it's all horrible. And it's just more and more cartel are in this country, more and more cartel. And you saw what happened in Mexico. And it's almost like we're daring them to be like, oh, yeah, give it a shot in the U.S. too. It's scary stuff.
And this is the thing that really just gets me totally irritated, because you talk to a lot of pastors that are, they'll put their hashtags out there, anti-human trafficking, and they talk a lot about anti-human trafficking. Then you tell them, discuss the border. Talk about the problem we have at the border. Oh, no, I can't do that. That's political.
Or they're a sanctuary church. They'll put down hashtag they're against human trafficking, but yet you'll find out that their church is a sanctuary church. It's all one and the same. It's all part and parcel. So if you're helping people coming here illegally, you're helping the whole process. You're helping the cartels out. So if you don't speak out like Pastor Tim does, you're really not doing your job.
Yeah, it's and it's weird because they're using social media. They're recruiting our young people into this. Let me show another video. They're totally recruiting their drivers.
Yeah, well, they're pretty blatant about it.
And we saw this throughout 2021 when we saw the trend of human smuggling recruitment through social media platforms. And we've shared multiple videos throughout the year with various different media outlets to show what's taking place, to show how these criminal organizations are exploiting this criminal activity using social media. And we're continuing to see that now in 2022. So you're right on point. Yes, they need to step in and take action. But again, when we talk about taking action, we know that in 2021, the federal government has failed to take any action on the current border crisis. They have turned their back on Americans and the entire country because they failed to safeguard what's taking place right now. And that's why we continue to see this rise in human smuggling, mass migration, the drugs that are pouring into the country, fentanyl. We saw a rise in fentanyl last year, and we're continuing to see that now going into 2022. So we anticipate 2022 is going to be by far more historic than what we saw in 2021 in terms of the numbers.
far more historic. I mean, we already saw 2021, that 2 million people, plus another 600,000 gotaways. We'll talk about fentanyl in a little bit, but we're seeing them recruit our young people into this. And we saw something, and I just show of hands for our live audience here today. How many of you heard about the Texas National Guard yesterday shooting a 17-year-old coming in? Anybody? Look at that. See, this, let me tell you, this is the problem. Because what took place yesterday was historic. How many times do you hear about our National Guardsmen firing on people coming into our country? You just don't hear about it, do you? The reason you don't hear about it is because it doesn't happen. But it happened yesterday, and where is this on the news? Where is the outcry? And it probably, the National Guardsman is going to end up in trouble over it, probably, sadly. But what's going on with this?
I want to add one thing about the figures. What I didn't mention was visa overstays. That's where people come here on a visa, student visa, a pleasure visa, business visa, whatever visa that we have tons of them. But they come and they say, we're going to leave at this certain date, and they don't. Those are at historical numbers now, too. So nobody's going after them because, again, this administration has cut ICE off at the knees, and ICE does a lot of the interior enforcement. So they know ICE isn't going to go after them. So Mayorkas didn't want to give out the numbers. He finally was forced to because by law, statutory, they have to give them out. It was like 3 months late, but he gave out the numbers. And again, this year set records of visa overstays. So you have to add that, hundreds of thousands of people that came here and didn't leave to those numbers.
Right.
But anyway, back to what you were saying. I just wanted to add that part to it.
Well, so there was an article that did come out on this, the Texas National Guard. Let me just read a little bit from it, but this is that article. Texas National Guard soldiers opened fire at a migrant smuggler who they were apprehending and drove straight at them, causing them to act in defense of themselves. Multiple law enforcement sources told Fox News. 2 soldiers fired their weapons at the smuggler at 1 a.m. yesterday in the border town of Laredo, Texas. The driver then sped off, was later apprehended by Border Patrol. In the car were 6 illegal immigrants, and there were no injuries. The driver, a 17-year-old U.S. citizen, is now charged with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon and human smuggling.
Well, at least they're charging him. Wow.
At least they're charging him. A 17-year-old U.S. citizen.
Right, and they're going to pay him like $5,000. Where else can you, as a teenager, make $5,000 like that? I mean, that's the minimum they're paying them for, depending on how many people they transport. We would catch, even down in San Diego, we would catch teenagers all the time because basically they're not going to be prosecuted. And that's the U.S. Attorney's Office and others that don't want to prosecute. I can't tell you how many times I did paperwork on a smuggling case, and it's real disheartening. And at the very bottom, after you made your phone calls, you write down, prosecution declined by U.S. Attorney's Office. You spent 6 hours on this paperwork for a smuggling case. This guy's a smuggler, and you're releasing him. Either just sending him back to Mexico, or if he's a U.S. citizen, releasing him. And we call them paper cases, and that's only gotten worse. And I touch on something is, Border Patrol is bleeding off agents that are retiring early at an astounding rate, or going to other agencies, or just leaving law enforcement. When I was in the Border Patrol, people would come to us, the union, to try to get waivers to stay longer. For most federal law enforcement, there's a mandatory retirement age of 57, and people wanted to stay longer. Now you're getting all these senior agents who can retire younger at 52, 53. They're all bailing. Morale is shot. And so you're losing all that brain trust, that experience. You can't replace them with brand new agents. And they're not even. This Congress, under the Democrats, have reduced the mandatory minimum for the Border Patrol. It was 21-something thousand was the minimum mandatory, statutory. And they've lowered that. And we don't even have that. So we have less manpower now than we ever have before, in years. And this is only one side does this, that think it's good to have an open border, who think it's good to be anti-law enforcement, just because. And that's the morale in the Border Patrol, and the effectiveness is being degraded on a daily basis.
From the biblical perspective, you look at what's going on, there's a spirit of Antichrist, and we know that at some point there will be the person of Antichrist. But it is the influence of the spirit of Antichrist that wants to tear down borders. Acts chapter 17, God says that from one blood he made all mankind, and he's the one that determines the borders of their inhabitants. God's the one that sets up borders. It's the Antichrist that wants to tear them down and have a one-world government where he gets to be in charge. So that's the biblical perspective on this. And you talk to Christians, they go, oh, I think it's a good idea, we should open the border. Like, well, didn't God set that border up? Doesn't God want that border to be there? Why is it that as Christians we can't get this? Well, the reason is because pastors won't talk about it. Because I don't talk about the border because that's politics, and I don't get involved in politics. Well, we're in this issue because pastors have abdicated their responsibility to teach what the Bible says about these issues. And now they're recruiting our kids and killing young girls and raping young girls. It's totally frustrating. And one good question would be, why is it the feds don't stop this recruitment? I mean, you look at what's going on with, you talked about the insurrection. That's not an insurrection at all. And they can go round up old ladies that were there on January 6th. Old ladies there holding their signs saying that they love Trump. You can go round them up. You can send the feds to go and blow their doors off and go in there and raid them, but you can't stop them from going online and recruiting 17-year-old U.S. citizens to go and do this kind of stuff, because it's pretty obvious what they're doing. And I want to get that one officer's take, and I want to get your take, but let's take a look at why, that's a good question. Why don't the feds stop it?
I mean, we saw tens of thousands of Americans that were killed by this lethal drug last year in 2021. We know for a fact that the drug trafficking organizations are manufacturing counterfeit pills, and of course they're smuggling them into the country. And that's why we're seeing tens of thousands of Americans that are being killed by this lethal drug through the terms of, as far as we talk about counterfeit pills. But the federal government is not taking any action trying to put a stop to this lethal drug coming into the country. But I can tell you that it's fallen in the hands, the responsibility of local law enforcement, our state agencies, as well as our federal partners, our U.S. Border Patrol agents who are out there in the field trying to make an impact. But again, they are being held back to process the mass surge of legal immigrants that are coming across. So it's fallen on the responsibility of the state to take action. That's why the state of Texas, we've been taking action from the very beginning with this current border crisis. That's why the Governor Greg Abbott, implemented Operation Lone Star. He has implemented stiffer penalties for the manufacturing of fentanyl, as well as stiffer penalties for human smuggling. But again, Dagan, we can talk about this, and we talked about this in 2021. The federal government is absent right now. They're not taking any action on this border crisis, and that's why we're...
Yeah, I mean, they're absent. They're not taking action. Why is it that they're absent and not taking action? Why do you think they're absent, not taking action?
So just on a little tangent, understand that a lot of this, the narcotics coming across, especially the fentanyl, this comes from foreign nation states. The cartels are not producing the fentanyl per se. A lot of it's coming from China. And so there are foreign nation states that love the havoc this causes in our country for various reasons. None of them good. And so you have to wonder then, are people in the federal government at certain levels or in the administration, whatever, are they complicit with this with China and other foreign nation states? This is nothing new for communist countries to kind of degrade Western democracies with narcotics flooding them in. And China is just, this is unreal, and it is flooding across the border. He mentioned something, and I'll touch on that, is when they send a mass group of illegal aliens across the border, and I use the term illegal alien, I've worked with activists and stuff, and I explain, I understand you're not an illegal as a human being, but the status is you're here as an alien and you're here illegally. It's an actual legal term. So when they send a bunch of illegal aliens across the border to rush across in the hundreds, Border Patrol has to come from everywhere and literally just transport them as a pain in the butt. They got to get vans in, they got to search them, they got to bring them in, they got to process them. That pulls the agents out of the field, off the line. And so there's big gaps now. And so what the cartels, the transnational criminal organizations do is they push the narcotics, the fentanyl, the opioids, they push that through in that area where there's no Border Patrol agents. They push high-value people through, people that they don't want to get caught by us. And again, you have to worry, you should be very worried, who are these high-value targets that are coming through, where they know the corridor is clear because there's no Border Patrol. So the state of Texas and a couple other states, mostly the state of Texas, have stepped up to the plate because we're inundated. And so we only have so many agents, and they have to be pulled out of the field, and they're pushing through the narcotics in those areas and other things. It could be parts of a nuclear weapon. I don't know. The fact is we just don't know. And so you have to believe that at certain levels in the federal government or in this administration, people are complicit with that. That's what they actually want. Because they're not stupid. I mean, nobody gets that high in administration. I mean, some of the younger ones are naive, but most of them, they're smart people. They went to college, they have degrees. Doesn't always make you smart, but these are generally smart people.
I would argue that it doesn't.
Yeah. So they know what's going on, though. They know. And for them to allow it to continue to happen, I have to say then they want this. And then you have to start asking yourselves, why do they want fentanyl and opioids and other drugs to come across this country and hurt and addict our kids and kill people with overdoses? Why do they want bad people to come into our country? What is the end game to that? And once you start asking those questions, you'll start maybe seeing a bigger picture, and that's where it's good to hear a biblical thing of why are they doing this and what is the end game to degrade the border to such an extent, fill our country with really bad people that want to do bad things to us. What is the reasoning? What's the end game?
And I can, as a pastor, I could speak to that, and the end game is a one-world government. That's exactly what the Bible tells us. We've been waiting for this. We've been watching it. We wait to see how it plays out. It's not there yet, but I mean, we're watching exactly what God told us would happen is happening right in front of our very eyes. And this has a big impact on local law enforcement. We're really blessed to be here in Riverside County. A lot of you that are watching online, you're not in Riverside County. I feel bad for you if you're out in LA County. That's just a terrible place to be right now with the district attorney that's out there. But here in Riverside County, we have the sheriff, Chad Bianco. We've got our district attorney, Mike Hestron. Both of them godly men, both of them doing a great job in our county. But it's still having drastic effects on them being able to do their job. Can you speak to what that's like? Because, I mean, I don't know if we even have enough time for that, but there's a lot of implications.
So I'm going to tell a story that happened many years ago. We caught a guy, the Border Patrol caught a guy, and he had been deported before. And that means 8 U.S.C. 1326, 8 United States Code 1326, reentry after prior deport. That's a felony. That's a felony. The U.S. Attorney's Office refused to prosecute. So we did what's called a VR, a voluntary return, and sent him back to Mexico. Well, he was able to sneak back across the border and go up to Oceanside, where he killed an Oceanside police officer. He was a gangbanger. This was several years ago. Some of you might remember it, some might not. The Oceanside police chief, in his grief, lashed out at the Border Patrol and said it was our fault. It wasn't. It was the U.S. Attorney's fault for not prosecuting this guy. If the U.S. Attorney's Office had prosecuted him, he'd be in a federal prison. But he didn't. And so that's part of the effect it has on local law enforcement. They die. They die. Crime goes up. People will tell me, my liberal friends, we have a lot of American homegrown, criminals. I'm like, we do. We have more than enough. We don't need to import more. We grow enough here. We don't need to import more.
Right.
So everybody that we import that's a criminal is one more death. It's one more rape. It's one more vehicular homicide. And so I don't understand why you'd want that. We're so far gone now that we've convinced people that we don't want ICE to deport someone who's a convicted felon. Several years ago, I would talk to Democrats, Barbara Boxer and others, and meet with them. And they understood that. They said, we don't have a problem with deporting convicted felons. That's changed now. This is a sanctuary state. The guy does time in state prison for rape, and he's an illegal alien. They will not let ICE know that he's being released to deport him. Where did that come about? And I got to think that most of these communities, even if they're here illegally, but they're obeying the laws other than coming here illegally, they don't want a child rapist in their community. Somehow we've convinced, though, the American public this is a good thing to do. And the impact on local law enforcement is more crime. It's more crime. So a lot of these people coming across the border are criminals. They're gangbangers. They're MS-13, they're 18th Street. I mean, I can go on. And we're allowing this country, and we seem to be okay with it, until you have in Long Island where a young girl has her head cut off by MS-13 in middle school. Then everybody's like, oh my God, what happened? And then it's too late, because they've formed the gang is there now. So at a local level, and I was a local cop in New York, it makes our job harder. It makes our job more dangerous. You've got people coming from countries where there is simply zero respect for law enforcement. I mean, it's bad here, but countries where there is no respect for law enforcement. I remember in San Diego, the PD said to us a while ago, this is several years ago, hey, we got a real hardcore Somalian population here, some real bad guys. They grew up standing in the backs of pickup trucks with 50 caliber machine guns. Can you guys do something? And I was like, yeah, we can't go after them. So that's a long answer to tell you how it affects local law enforcement. Those of you who have brothers and sisters, sons and daughters that are police officers, it makes it more dangerous for them, and it makes their job harder. That's it in a nutshell.
Right. And there's definitely, we talk about the end game. The Antichrist, of course, wants to tear everything down, wants a one world government. But we look at just, short term. When I say short term, I'm talking decades. What has been one of their goals? And I think one of the major goals they've had is to replenish their voter base. Mm-hmm. And right now, we just saw, like in New York City, we saw the passing. Well, let's just take a look at New York City and what they did, and we'll talk about it.
I'm trying not to laugh.
With the majority in favor, New York City Council makes history. The Our City, Our Vote bill now heads to the mayor's desk. It will give some 800,000 non-citizens the right to vote in local elections.
Today is a historic day for New York City and for the United States of America. Congratulations, Adonis.
There you go. I mean, this is just one city. Now, that's one city, 800,000 people. And you think about what's going on, and we look at the narrow elections that we have been having and the amount of fraud that's been going on, but now what we're doing is making it legal for people who aren't even citizens to vote in our elections. This has clearly been one of the parts of their agenda, clearly.
So just a little bit to understand, what New York City, the council said was, this is just for immigrants. They want you to think that's not for illegal immigrants. But the left has been very Orwellian, and they actually changed definitions. And so it went from illegal alien to illegal immigrant to just immigrant. And then you read what they're really saying, though. They're like, well, anybody that's allowed to be here. Well, that's people like DACA. So DACA, the first two letters mean deferred action. So whether you like DACA or not, basically you're still here illegally. We're just not taking any action against you. So watch very carefully how they use words and terminology and semantics. What that's saying is basically anybody that's here is going to be able to vote. You could be just jumped the fence 2 days ago. But not only this, think about this. If you're a foreign nation state wants to affect our policy, you could flood us very easily with people. We were talking over dinner about my wife seeing at the shelters in Tijuana, tons of Russian males, nicely dressed, all military-age men, all looking fit, waiting to come across the border. So if you want to affect our elections and how we do things, that's a way to do that. Make no bones about it. New York City is the first state to do that, but I guarantee you watch for either San Francisco or Austin, Texas, or even LA to follow suit. You're going to see some major cities following suit. And right now they say it's only local elections. Watch how sometimes it's going to somehow segue into national elections, congressional districts, senatorial districts. Watch very carefully for that, but you're going to see that, and that's part of the maybe not the end game, but part of where they want to go.
Right.
And to be able to run our elections, to send people in, flood it with people. And it's funny, Hispanics, and my wife's from Mexico, are becoming more and more conservative. They always were conservative. They just didn't realize it. But usually by second or third generation, most people from Mexico and Central American states, they become pretty conservative. They walk away from the Democratic Party. Or they might remain registered Democrats, but they vote for Republicans. So you need to replenish somebody who's brand new, who says, you're going to give me free stuff? Cool, I'll vote for you. Or doesn't understand the democratic process. And this is replenishing, I think, the voter base by just keep bringing in constant influx of people that are here illegally, who you're promising. It's basically bribery. Newsom just said everybody in this state, in California, even if you're here illegal, you're going to get free health care. My wife's amazed that I pay for my health care, and I have to pay money on top of that. I've been a U.S. citizen all my life. I don't get free health care. But if I came here illegally, I'll get free health care. That's a bribe. That's a bribe to keep voting for a certain party, to keep them in power. And they have to constantly replenish that, because after a while they do learn, like, ooh, I'm going to walk away from them because they're pro-abortion. You know, they're pro-telling my kid at 9 that he's really a girl when I know he's a boy. They start seeing that, and then they start walking away. So you got to constantly replenish that. And I do think that's one of the reasons that they want the open border.
Right. And they're trying to confuse all of us by trying to skew data. And there's been a long-standing way of how things are being counted, but now they're being counted in a different fashion. Can you speak to that?
So again, I have people that are in the Border Patrol that are bosses in this and that still talk to me and give me information. And I was looking for some numbers today, and they started explaining the numbers and I said, that's not how we used to do it. It used to be pretty easy. You had a thing called TBS, that's turn back south. So if I race down to the fence and a guy jumped the fence and he runs back to the fence and jumps back to Mexico, that goes on our stats as a TBS, turn back south. If I apprehend him, that counts as an apprehension. Whether he gave himself up to me or he ran away and I caught him, or he tried to hide and I caught him, it's an apprehension. And then we have what's called gotaways, 3 categories easy. Now they've added a couple new categories, encounters, give-ups. So what you're having now is, instead of just the mass apprehensions, which you can understand easily enough, wow, there's 2 million last year. Now you have a thing called encounters, which I have no idea what that means. I truly don't. Even the person that was reading it to me says, Chris, I don't even know what this means. And then you have give-ups, meaning they walked up to you and said, hey, I want to asylum, and then you have apprehensions. So they created 2 new categories, which breaks up apprehensions into like 3 categories now. So you won't see, so I have a feeling next year when they say, well, how many, well, there was only, 1 million of this, and you won't see a grand total. You'll have to do the math yourself. And that's brand new. So I'm cynical, that was done to obfuscate, to hide, to camouflage the numbers, to make it harder, because the press will go along with it, go, oh, okay, so your actual apprehensions are way down. Well, the 600,000 or a million that gave up to us, they still count because we took them into custody, we put handcuffs on them, we brought them into the station, fingerprint them, but they won't come under apprehensions. And then let them go.
Right.
But that won't count under apprehensions. So watch that one too. If apprehensions drop, it's because they're playing games in categories with the numbers.
Yeah. Well, talking to every Border Patrol agent I know, they're all telling me the same thing. We are on course to be way more than last year.
Yeah.
Way more.
There's no reason.
And last year was historic. And so we look at also some of our foreign.
But nobody's talking about it.
Nobody's talking about it. That's the thing. Like, it was a big deal when you were on the program last time. It was a big deal. Yeah. It was a big. Everybody was talking the border
even
crisis.
Even CNN had to talk about it.
Yeah, they had to. And now it's like, who's talking about it? We hit a record, historical record, and we're on course to beat that record, and nobody's talking about it.
And I don't get it. Even people that are Republicans. I usually get a lot of speaking engagements to talk about this. That dried up in the last few months. So I'm not sure if there's just on the Republican side, if there's just, oh my God, it's so depressing, I don't want to hear about it anymore. But certainly on the, and I don't like the term mainstream media because that means they're mainstream, the legacy media, they have their own agenda not to talk about it. But man, there is crickets anymore about the border, and it is out of control, and I don't get it.
Yeah, yeah, I don't either. I guess there's just other things they want us to be focused on right now.
Yeah.
Who knows? All of this sounds horrible, and it really quite, in many ways it is, but is there any silver lining here? Is there any hope? What do you got for us? Don't leave us feeling how we feel right now.
I hate doing it. So, look, I don't like to advocate for voting any person or party. Let your heart be your guide. Let your conscience be your guide.
I would say let the word be your guide. Let the word of God be your guide.
That's even a better way to put it.
Yeah.
So the takeaway is we actually saw what worked in 2020. It took a while for Trump because they fought against him, but when he got the programs in place, when we saw more infrastructure on the border, when we saw better technology, when we saw the fencing going up, when we saw the migrant protection protocols and other things going on, we saw the numbers plummet dramatically. The National Border Patrol Council actually endorsed President Trump. We were the first union to endorse him. First time we endorsed a president, period. We did that because he listened to us. He told us, I'm going to consider you guys our subject matter experts. We know now that the takeaway for the positive side is we know direct knowledge, saw it firsthand what works. So we can go back to that. It just means putting the right people, and it doesn't necessarily have to be Trump. I don't know who's going to, I like DeSantis on a lot of things, so it doesn't really matter the exact person. It's what their thoughts are and their platform is on that. So the positive takeaway is if you put the right people in, we can get back to a border that is much more stable, or a system that works, where you allow people to come here because they put in and they go through the process. I was very proud when I saw my wife get her citizenship. It took her years. It's doable. You can do that. But we can secure the border and start lowering the crime rate around America just in that alone. I mean, I could address DAs that we need to get rid of and defund the police and the nonsense there, but just right on the border, which is my bread and butter, we saw what worked. We can go back to those policies and programs, and we can get control of the border again and lower the amount of accidental poisonings and fentanyl deaths and opioid deaths, the amount of people that are coming here and killing people, raping them, beheading them, committing other crimes. We can get back to that. So all it really takes then is to get the right people into the right positions. And I will add this because we had this discussion earlier. You also have to start at the lowest level. I've been saying this for years. Mm-hmm. Republicans have been horrible about that. Yep. We have positions where Republicans don't even run. So the left runs somebody unopposed. And they'll say it's a nonpartisan position, like a Board of Ed. That's not true.
No such thing.
You need to get people at lower levels. One, because there's a lot of power there. You get to indoctrinate the kids, you get to do this. But also you rise higher. Most people, unless you're Hillary Clinton, don't just become a U.S. Senator. You have to pay your dues and, oh, that's a carpetbagger, a reverse carpetbagger. I'm from New York, and so. But usually you have to pay your dues, you start lower. So they don't come full blown as a congressman or congresswoman out of nowhere normally. Where do they start? They start at the Board of Ed, they start at the water departments, they start on this, they start on that. And we need to start running decent people. I don't care what they call themselves. If you're a conservative Democrat, God bless. But we need to start running decent people for these lower level positions. But the next elections, please, 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 vote. And vote for people that you believe in your soul. Care about the people of this country itself, the Constitution. And yeah, we can then turn this around again. It is doable. We've done it before. So that's my takeaway. It is doable. It's not this insurmountable problem. Can't be fixed. We knew how to fix it. It was working. Let's try to get back to that. And I will end with this. One of the things I would meet with Congress and senators was I had the easiest union job in the world. And they look at me and I'm like, all these guys really want, the men and women of the United States Border Patrol, a lot of them are former or prior military. You know what they want? They want to be allowed to work harder. That's me as a union guy saying, let my men and women work harder. So let the men and women of the United States Border Patrol do their job, protect you, protect the United States, and protect the Constitution of the United States.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll give you guys just a good encouragement as well. Pastor Jack Hibbs, Pastor Phil Hotzenpiller, and myself are going to be getting together with religious leaders from Mexico. And there's going to be a massive prayer session at the U.S. border, the U.S.-Mexico border. This has not been done in this fashion. The way it's going to be done has not been done this way before, and we're really looking forward to that. And I really believe this is a spiritual battle we're in. This is the spirit of Antichrist, and we already know this. We aren't fighting for victory. We're fighting from it. If you are in Christ, you've already won. And it's that simple. We need to continue to remember that. All these things going on is terrible stuff. Sometimes you feel like Habakkuk. If you haven't read Habakkuk, go read it. But I mean, Habakkuk's like, Lord, how much longer do I have to see this? How much longer is this stuff going to go on? The law is powerless. Perverse judgments are going forth. And Habakkuk was just beside himself. Why do I have to keep seeing this? And God's like, hold on, Habakkuk. Don't worry. I've got this. You know what God said? I'm doing something in the background that is so great that even if I told you what it was, you wouldn't believe me. And the question we have to ask is, do we believe that God is in the background right now doing something so great that even if he told us what it was, we wouldn't believe him? I believe that that's what's going on. I believe God is on the move, and I believe that Satan is like a cornered cat right now, just doing whatever he can because he knows his time is short. Amen? Amen. It's so much, so much stuff going on. Always enjoy having you out, Christopher. Can you hang out for a little bit? People have questions? All right. We're really encouraged. Next week, our guest is Anthony Trimino. We've had him out before. I got to tell you, I'm excited that he's going to continue to try to move forward and try to become the governor of this state. We've got a lot to talk about next week. If you guys have never met him, you're going to want to be here. If you have friends, family members, neighbors, get them out. They've got to hear from this guy. He is a man after God's own heart, and you're going to want to hear his story. So we will see you guys next week right here on Wednesday Night Live, Our Watch. God bless. Well, hey, I really do hope that our guest today and our time together was a blessing to you. I want to ask, if it was, would you please share this video out with your friends on social media? Also, hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe to us so that way you can be updated every time we have a new episode of Our Watch. Again, blessing to have you with us, and we hope that you have a blessed time being effective for the kingdom in the culture that we live in.